Bole Baba Ki Jai. If you remember in our last reading, Daksha and his wife had a beautiful daughter named Sati. And now Sati is growing up, and we'll talk about that in this reading. Brahma resumed his story. The goodness of that child, who was Parashakti incarnate, grew like the moon on its way to fullness. Even as a small girl, she drew pictures of Shiva of uncanny likeness, though she had never seen him. Her songs of childhood were of Shiva. The melodies and lyrics came to her inspired and incomparable. Almost before we knew it, she reached puberty. Do you remember Narada? You and I went to visit her at her father's house. How entirely exquisite she was. I can still see her in my mind, as if it were just this morning. She took no convincing of what we wanted for her. She knew she was born to be Shiva's bride. Daksha had been delighted at the thought. He had always encouraged her to draw her pictures of Shiva, to sing of him. Now, when he saw her young woman, perfect-faced, perfect body, he thought, how will I give her to anyone, even to Shiva? Perhaps that was the germ of his sin. Seeing Sati, who could have blamed him? Though what he did later was unforgivable. Both you and I, Narada, said to her, Sati, with tapasya you can make him yours, who has never taken a woman. Sati worshipped Shiva in her home. She prayed to him. In the time of the month of Savan, she prayed to him with sacred threads. She drank no water, save on the 14th day. Every day and soon every moment she spent in devotion to him. Nothing else made her happy, and he was established in her passionate heart. After these rituals, Sati began her bhakti in earnest. She thought of nothing but him. So single-minded was her meditation and practice, the devas of light came to watch her. Both Vishnu and I came to watch her. We marveled at her immaculate tapasya. Then we went to austere, magnificent Kailash, Vishnu with Lakshmi, I with Saraswati, and all the devas in entourage. We said to Shiva, obeisance Mahesa, O Purusha beyond Prakriti, obeisance. Your realm unknown to the sages and gods, obeisance three-eyed, always radiant, pervasive Lord, obeisance, Lord of yogins, all-merciful Lord Shiva. Shiva gave us an ambiguous look, Muni, and my heart gave a lurch. Surely he divined our intention as clearly as a father does his child's. He said in his slow, deep way, Vishnu, Brahma, O Devas, I am delighted by your praises. Tell me, what brings you to Kailash? Always the quickest of us, Vishnu inclined his head at me. So, of course, in Shiva's awesome presence, I, Brahma, became our spokesman. Ocean of mercy, I began avoiding his gaze, for I was afraid. We have come to petition you, O Lord. Though Vishnu, you and I are one in truth, we are three and separate in the universe of forms. Vishnu has Lakshmi for his wife, and I Saraswati. We beg you to also marry, if not for your own pleasure, at least for the sake of creation, said I, trembling. He was not a bit put out. Vishnu and Brahma, the sight of you both quickens my joy, O masters of the world. But of what use is a wife to me? I have bliss in my yoga. To me, marriage can only be bondage. Yet, since you have come to petition me, how can I refuse? He was so sure of himself. But tell me, who can I marry, Brahma? Which woman do you know who can bear my golden seed in her body? He paused, then said thoughtfully, she must be a yogini when I am a yogin, an ardent wife when I am a girasta. When I am absorbed in my Atman, she will be cursed if she distracts me at all. And the final condition, O best of gods, If she ever doubts me for even a moment, I will abandon her. Find me such a wife, and if for nothing else, to please you both, I will marry her." He laughed. He was certain we could never find or even create that woman he described. By our secrecy and her Maya, he did not know about the Devi's incarnation. It was true, which other people could bear, which other woman could bear his terrific power within her womb. I smiled, and Mahavishnu also. Now he had committed himself. I said to Shiva, "We know the woman for you." He arched his long brow, but I met his gaze levelly. At that moment, he knew of the Devi's birth. There was not a flicker from Shiva, no ripple on the sea of calm that was his face. Encouraged, I went on eagerly, if now a little ashamed of my petty scheming against the noble god. I did not realize all this was his doing, beginning with my daughter in the lotus. Shiva saw deeper and farther in time than I ever did. She is Daksha's child, my granddaughter. She is called Sati, and she is Durga, born in the world just for you, I said triumphantly. She already worships you with a fierce tapasya. Take her for your wife, Shiva. Let the three worlds rejoice. Vishnu put in, "Do so, my lord. The universe will be ennobled when you marry Sati." Shiva said quietly, if my conditions are met, so be it. Then he looked at me piercingly for a moment, deep in my eyes, my soul, where I hardly knew myself, but felt him gaze. I broke into a fine sweat as an ominous foreboding stirred within me, a dark thing. Even in that moment of victory, I remembered that the reason why this had come about was hardly pure. I thrust the thought away as inauspicious, and Shiva murmured, "All will be well at last." Vishnu, the others, and I came away happy. During the month of Ashvin, Sati observed her fast as usual on the 8th day of the bright half of the moon. The next night, Shiva appeared before her. He came in light. He was supremely handsome, fair, five-faced, three-eyed. The crescent moon was on his top knot. His neck was blue where he had once quaffed poison. He carried the Trishul and wore an emerald serpent as an amulet of protection. His body shone with an ascetic sacred dust, a cosmos of infinitesimal stars. The Ganga sparkled in his jata. He was lustrous as 100 Kumaras. His staggering beauty pierced Sati through. He had assumed a most ravishing form for this devotee. She bent her head shyly and knelt at his feet. Gently and forever, he touched her head with his palm. His grace entered her like fire of galaxies. Shiva said tenderly, "Sati, I am pleased with your tapasya. Ask me for anything you want." He wanted Narada to hear her speak. Having seen her face and her form, he already imagined her voice. She was so overcome, she was speechless. She stared mutely at the ground. "Choose your vara, dear lady," he urged her again. She managed to whisper, "As you are pleased to give me, either the boon I want or the husband I desire." He laughed, delighted now at what we had committed him to. That Sati stood blushing and so lovely before him, he said, "You be my wife." She raised her great eyes up to his and smiled into his heart like the beginning of a new creation. They stood for a long while, locked in the gaze. He shone like the finest crystal. She was lambent as the moon on a dark night. She lowered her eyes. If she stared any longer, she would never be able to tear herself away. She joined her palms to him. "Shiva, take me to be your wife in my father's home. In a daze, Shiva replied, so be it. Jai Mahamaya ki jai, Mahadeva Mata ki jai, Bole Baba ki jai.